Hello and welcome again to Classic Games Revisited. I'm your host Dami, and today we are reviewing Castlevania for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Castlevania was first released in 1986 in Japan under the name Akumajo Dracula, which roughly translates to Castle Dracula. It was released for the Famicom Disk System, which was a peripheral of the Nintendo Entertainment System that was not available in the United States. It was also released to the MSX computer format, another Japanese type computer format. It was also somewhat popular in Europe. And we saw it in '87 as Castlevania. We are the character, Simon Belmont. And the plot is pretty simple. You're a vampire hunter, and you're armed with a whip. Your initial whip is akin to a wet noodle. Doesn't do much. It's very short, very wuss-like, but it's very easy to power up your whip. If you whip the candles throughout the stages, little treats fall out of them. Could be hearts. Consequently, hearts are not life power-ups like you would think. Hearts are your ammunition for your secondary weapon, which you have to pick up. There are maybe a half a dozen secondary weapons throughout the game, and they range from the sword you see here, to a stopwatch, to an axe, a Molotov cocktail type contraption. I think there's a boomerang in there. Probably missing a couple others. But the hearts are your ammunition. So, don't think you can get hurt and pick up a heart. It's not that simple. To regenerate health, you have to come across what they're calling food, but it looks like a kind of giant liver on a plate. I don't know, not very appetizing, but it does restore your health. This game, when it first came out, was an instant blockbuster hit as far as video games are concerned. Everybody had a copy of Castlevania, or at least had a friend who had a copy of Castlevania. And everybody loved the game. Let me talk briefly about the controls and the gameplay. The gameplay is extremely tight. Everything seems to do what you want it to do. With one slight exception, maneuvering on the steps can be a little tricky if you want to face a certain way and attack an enemy while on the steps. But that aside, everything else seems pretty responsive. The B button is your whip. A is jump. The D-pad controls your direction. And if you want to fire your secondary weapon, you hold up and B. Up and B will shoot off whatever kind of secondary weapon you have. There are 6 levels in Castlevania, and each level has an end boss. To beat the end boss, each one has a little trick. The bat seems to be easiest with the axe, but everybody has their own technique. So, as you progress through the levels, your end bosses are, in order, Bat, Medusa's head, a pair of twin mummies, Frankenstein, the Grim Reaper, and last but not least, Dracula. Each stage gets progressively harder, and you can continue if you die. But if you die and you choose to continue, you start at the very beginning of the stage. There are lots of well thought out and very cool obstacles to overcome, and a good variety of enemies. If you haven't noticed by now, each stage has a unique musical score. And the musical scores are done very well, at least in my opinion. They contribute to a general pace and theme of each stage, and are a nice little touch. I never understood what these enemies were there. You just saw all those skull heads facing either way. They always confused me, even when I was a kid. Here we have Medusa, who is very simple to beat if you have the Molotov cocktail, because it just seems to stun her. And when you kill her, like every other enemy boss, they drop a giant marble, which you have to pick up to progress to the next stage. You've probably noticed by now also that between stages, they show you this handy little map so you can't get lost in Castle Dracula. It also helps show you how far along you've advanced, how much further you got to beat the game. Back in 1987 as a kid, and even to this day, I really enjoyed the variety of enemies. Whether it were flying Medusa heads, or those skeletons that throw bones at you. Though they never seem to lose any bones. They have an infinite supply of bones to throw at you. Here we have the third stage end boss, which is actually two enemies. I call them the twin mummies. Though I don't know if they're actual twins, or if they are, if they're identical or fraternal. It took me a couple tries this time to beat them. They were a little harder than I anticipated. They throw toilet paper at you, which is very harmful, as you can see. And we beat them. Yay! We are now halfway through the game. It took me a little over 20 minutes to get this far, and I used only one continue, which isn't too bad for not playing the game since probably 1990. And this underwater level always gave me a little trouble. It's very easy to get knocked off into the water by some stupid little fireball from these fish gremlin things that pop out of the water. So, all in all, Castlevania, excellent game. Excellent, excellent game. Highest marks a Nintendo game can get. Enjoyable, fun, awesome, scary. What more could you ask for? High replay value, and all around good experience. I highly recommend Castlevania. Give it a try. I'm Dami, your host for Classic Games Revisited. Till next time.